All right. Well, this is it. We're here. We're live. We are on the air. And this is another week of CoCo Talk. CoCo Talk 12, everybody. How are we all today, people of the Earth who are watching us, people of the Earth and other planets who are joining us? I'm so glad to have you all here. Our cast of characters today starts off with Barry Nelson from the Wild East in Florida. Richard Cavell from, is it Cavell or Cavell? How do I say your last name, Richard? Richard's in the UK. And we have David Ladd from Parts Unknown from Medical Experimental Laboratories and other genetic research. Richard Lorbieski is here for the first time ever in recorded history. Paul Thayer is here. Welcome, Paul. John Strong. John T. Robbs is here. Hey, John, how are you? I think this might be one of the first or second time you're with us. Bill Noble, as always, looking lovely as ever.
Yep.
And the lovely and talented L. Curtis Boyle. And the L is for lazy.
Lackadaisical.
Lackadaisical, yes. Mike was muted. Okay, Richard, you're free to speak whenever, Richard. Nobody else bothers.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Is it Cavell or Cavell or?
I would say Cavell.
Cavell. Okay. Well, welcome from the jolly UK. Pleasure to have you again.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk about the color computer. The main topic I thought we would dig into today, and we don't have to get to it right away, but there's been if there is a hot topic this week, not to mention the store and the mall, but if there's a hot topic regarding the CoCo, that's probably been MAME and the discussion of MAME and how to use MAME as a color computer and some of the added new benefits and features of MAME, like being able to emulate speech sound pack, being able to emulate John Linville's super game module card that supports sound, and all kinds of other stuff. To me, there's a lot going on that make MAME worth looking at. Just my opinion. There are plenty of other opinions, and there's plenty of other things we could say. Well, MAME doesn't do this, and MAME doesn't do that, and blah 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 blah. And yes, all these things are true, and these things are all worth talking about. Hey, Rick Adams has joined us. Welcome, Rick. But for better or for worse, MAME is a pretty damn good emulator. And when I say MAME, we are talking about two things now, because now when I say MAME, the mess is silent, right? Because MAME was its own thing for a while, multiple arcade machine emulator, and that's how we played all of our arcade games. And then there was another system known as MESS, multiple emulation super system, and MESS was something that would emulate consoles and home computers. And so MAME and MESS have been merged for quite some time now. So when I say MAME, I'm really talking about oh, hold on just a second. I'm getting an echo. Thank you, Mike. Gosh, dang it. All right, let me know if that echo is gone now. I had to reinstall everything today. I've been rebuilding my system. So yeah, I have to go through all the learning curves and configuration curves to get Skype working, to get my XSplit working. Thank you, Michael Brent, for telling me there was an echo. I think I just fixed that because XSplit defaults to taking a microphone instead of whatever. Yeah. I am hearing an echo. There you go. Thank you. So hopefully that echo is fixed. But anyway, so MAME and MESS are now the same thing. MAME and MESS are the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, I think it's gone. All right, yeah, and hello everybody who's watching. So MAME and MESS are kind of the same thing now. So when you go to MAME and you download MAME, you're downloading MAME and MESS. And when I say downloading, I'm assuming you're going to the website, you're downloading what's there. When it comes to building one, there's lots of ways to build it. That's over my head right now. But anyways, MAME, I think MAME is a compelling product to consider. And we'll try to demystify it a little bit, because for as many cool things as it does, there are lots of other MAME things it does. And it's the MAME things that MAME does that do present, let's just say, some idiosyncrasies.
Challenges.
Challenges. So that's going to be the main topic we'll talk about. But before we jump into that, does anybody want to go around the room and just talk about anything? Or, take a shower or whatever you're doing there. But does anybody want to talk about anything that's been going on this week that is either that they've been doing themselves that may be of interest to us, or things you guys have seen posted in the community that might be of interest to talk about? Maybe we'll just go around the room here and just have like an opening topic discussion of anything you guys feel like shouting out before we jump into the main MAME segment of the show.
I guess I can talk a little bit about Wayne Campbell is working on his Basic 09 decompiler again, which he actually started decades ago. And actually, I used it back then for testing some of the Nitrous 9 stuff. If we had, Basic 9 programs that weren't working properly in Nitrous 9 and the source code wasn't available, we downloaded it. His old version was called Decom. And I used it on quite a few programs to get, source code back that was missing, including my own stuff. And he's been working on a more heightened version of it, I guess, and fixing some of the bugs that existed back then. So that's been of interest to me.
Okay.
Well, though apparently, from what he said, not too many people bought the program way back then, so I was probably one of the few. But it's a cool facility.
Okay, what the hell is that noise? Somebody's got sounds like a spigot or something going off in the background there.
Not sure where that's coming from.
All right.
Sounds like someone's running a buzzsaw or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Nick Marentes has just joined us. Good day. All right, so sorry about that, Curtis. So you were talking about the Wayne Campbell project of Decom.
Yeah.
And
I gotta do something. I'll be right back.
so this is the feedback and random sound episode, too, of CoCo TALK. Actually, why don't
Sample
we
of digital sound effects.
Let's play Name That Interference, and let's see if we can guess what it is and where it's coming from. that one sounded like a semi-truck driving by somewhere.
Live from a flatbed on the highway.
Right. So explain to me more about what this Decom is. It's a decompiled or reverse engineered version of the original Basic 09?
Not Basic 09 itself, but of Basic 09 programs. Like, you have the option of packing them, which makes them run faster, and then you run them through a runtime package called RunB. And basically it makes a tokenized version of it, and also does some other optimizations at the same time, so it runs faster. But once you've got it at that point, you can't list it anymore. It's gone from being a source code listing. So if you've downloaded a program that nobody released the source code for, or if you've accidentally deleted your own source code, which I've done a few times, it's a way for you to get code back. It won't be identical, but it'll at least be something you can actually edit and list, and start mucking around with it again and changing your source listings. So it's come in invaluable for me. Like, back when we were doing Nitrous 9 development at first, I was decompiling things like the Wild West poker game, and I think the window writer word processor and stuff, because we were going to expand it to use some of the better features in Nitrous 9, like faster graphic fonts rather than using hardware text fonts, or making sure get put buffers lined up properly so you could optimize the game in poker's case. So it turned out to be quite a useful utility for us for debugging. And it was also just a useful utility for, expanding on somebody else's program that never released a source, and he's no longer in the CoCo community, so you can't contact them.
Right.
It's like a disassembler for Basic 09, basically, is what it is. For Basic 09 programs, not Basic 09
Okay,
itself.
so once somebody has taken a Basic 09 program and saved it into whatever that
The packed
format,
version.
the packed version, this basically depacks it and brings it back into more of a source code format that you can look at it. Okay, I got you. I'm slow, but I'm steady.
It'd be like a Pascal decompiler for P code.
Okay, and so where are we going to be able to get this? Is it available for download just yet? Is there a link to it?
Well,
Is it
Wade's
work in
got
progress?
some versions up of it, but he's got some bugs he's working on right now, so I wouldn't download it right now because there's some known
I
bugs.
got you.
But as soon as he gets those fixed, we'll probably make a link in a later show. That once it's at the point where it's fairly safe to use.
Okay. Michael Brandt threw out a message in the chat that says, Neil and I have a project we would like to gauge interest in for a potential product run. A while ago, a WordPack run was done. We want to see if there's any interest in another run. I am not familiar with what WordPack is, so...
That's an 80-column card for the CoCo 1 and 2. That also works in the CoCo 3.
Okay.
Mm.
And there's some programs from Livestream level 1 and even some of the old CoCo 1 and 2 stuff that supported, like Dynastar, Dynaspell, Dynacalc, Scred, and a bunch of others actually supported. So on a CoCo 1 or 2, you'd have a real 80-column screen at a faster refresh rate, and it looks even better than the CoCo 3's 80-column display does.
So it's an actual video display
Card
something
that
or
you plug
another? Okay, and then you have to plug a monitor into that?
Yep.
Okay. So it's basically, for lack of a better term, like a CoCo VGA card where you plug, or CoCo display adapter, you're plugging into there and you plug a monitor in that, and then boom, you're outputting to that.
And you could actually, if I remember correctly, under OS 9 Level 1, you could actually run both displays at once. Your CoCo would have your 32-column display, and then you have an 80-column display. It's almost like having
Oh man, that's
a terminal built in.
That's like a high-tech concept on a low-tech system. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
You could maybe even use that for like debug type stuff too, possibly.
Yes,
While
you
you're
could
working
redirect
on
stuff to
something.
the. You could say you're running a program on one and redirect your error output to another, and yep.
Oh, wow.
And it had a few
actually
80-column things
used to
that
do that.
a lot of 80-column cards didn't have back then. Like the WordPack 2 in particular had like smooth scrolling options and all kinds of stuff too. So
Interesting.
I just want to let you guys know, I apologize, but I have to drop off of this call, so
All
I'll
right.
see you guys around.
All right.
we'll see you next week, hopefully, Barry.
See you next week. Yep.
Yep. See you, Barry.
All right.
That combined video idea, I used to do that with my first PC, which had a Hercules monochrome card and a CGA graphics card,
Neat.
and
Neat.
I was doing some graphics programming at the time, which was kind of cool. I had my programming editor on the text side and the graphics being generated on the other.
Yeah.
Very cool. And that was John who was just saying that, right? John T. Robbs?
Yeah, John T. Robbs.
Yeah. And that's fine. No, because MAME is the newer version, not MAME, but hello, a lot of things on the brain here. But the latest version of Skype kind of puts a little colored underscore under who's speaking. I just want to make sure I grab that. Now that's kind of cool. Yeah, you're really dating yourself. We're all dating ourselves when we're talking about the CoCo even. But when you
Yeah, Hercules, that's too modern.
Yeah,
What are you talking about?
Hercules. Yeah, and I cannot ever now not hear the word Hercules and not think of Eddie Murphy's movie where it's like Hercules. What was that movie with the Nutty Professor where he's playing his whole family? So anytime I hear the word Hercules, in my mind I always hear Hercules. The Hercules graphics adapter, MGA, right? Mono graphics adapter. So it was something that took, if you only had the green screen monitor that was designed for text, they came up with a way to output graphics, kind of like a TRS-80 Model 4 high-res graphics interface. It added graphics to a display that was ultimately designed for pretty much text.
Yeah, and it had a pretty weird res too, wasn't it? Like 348 or something.
It was non-standard resolution. Yeah, it was pretty.
It was higher
interesting.
res than a standard 80-column card. It was actually really nice text and pretty good graphics.
So yeah, you would have to have two graphics cards on a PC to do that. That's kind of, I mean, that's stuff that we do now every day. I mean, it's every PC can output the multiple displays, PC and Mac. So we're kind of used to that, but it was a little bit uncommon in the 80s to have multiple displays off of one system at one.
Especially the early 80s, which is when the WordPack came out.
Yeah.
And then Tandy actually sold the WordPack to, I think, through their express order service later on in the CoCo's life. So you could actually get it from Tandy through express order.
Who developed it originally?
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was common, like for people that were running CPM, that they would get an 80-column card sometimes with the Z80 cartridge, or they'd use the WordPack along with CPM.
Okay. So now that we've been explained what it is, I guess the question is, what's the interest? I don't know that we're going to get the answer off of this live stream, but yeah, I think that's definitely a good question for the mailing list and probably a good question for the Facebook group. What's the interest? I'm kind of interested just to see what it looks like. I'm not sure what the hell I'd be able to plug into it. What was the output on it? Like composite or something else?
I think it was composite, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Michael Brandt saying something like PBJ, peanut butter and jelly. I don't know, is that a company? PBJ.
Yeah, that was a company. That is the right one too. I remember. As soon as you said that, I remember.
Okay, PBJ. All right, very cool. Very cool. So, is there an interest for it? That's a great question. And even more interesting would be, tying back to our main topic today, MAME. Would MAME be able to emulate that? I would say it probably
It's
could.
a straight 6845 Motorola video chip.
Yeah.
I think it was the same one as used in some of the TRS-80s. So
yeah.
It's probably already in the emulation. You just have to tie it in.
Yeah.
And then a little ROM to help control it.
Yeah, tie it into the multi-pack or whatever the case may be. Very interesting. And so what else? Before we jump into MAME, anybody got anything you want to talk about real quick? Just what you've been working on this week or what has interested you this week in the world of retro or CoCo?
I think, Rick, you officially announced that you're working on the
Yeah.
Just in case I was
What?
wrong.
The who?
Well, you kind of made it public that you're working on
Bomb threat?
game. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's been public for quite some time. Yeah.
Well, I know it's been public in the Skype group, but I think it was the first time you mentioned it on the list was this past week, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Because I just joined the list a while back, and I was kind of lurking for a while just to kind of get a feel of how things worked on the list before I posted something. So the first time I posted something, of course, what am I going to talk about? Well, my project, of course.
Sure. So have you figured out how that list works? Because I've been lurking it for quite some time. I still don't have a clue. It really seems to be, it seems to be, sometimes there's a really interesting topic on there. Sometimes the things people want to talk to about ad nauseum are things like, well, who owns the ROMs and how are we going to get these ROMs? And, other things that we'll never, ever really have a full control of. But
Anytime you have a discussion of copyrights, you're going to get a lot of heat and not much light.
There's a lot of opinion on this.
Yes, all the potential LegalZoom employees are all chiming in now. So,
yeah,
LegalZoom is not
everybody
a law
has
firm.
an opinion. Everybody has an opinion, and 90% of them are wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's just how it is.
Right.
But you got to hear all.
Most people discuss legally what they would like it to be in the law.
Yes.
Most of them have no idea what the actual law is.
The old slogan about opinions are the opinions are like your derriere. Everyone has one, and they all stink. Or
Right.
Yeah.
So
no one wants to see yours.
I have something I could talk about if you guys want. So
please, Paul, by all means.
Yeah. So you guys probably all know from the Facebook page that I've been working on this Timberman game for like 2 years. First, I was originally doing some stuff in BASIC, and obviously that's too slow. So Simon, the great Simon, was teaching me how to do assembly language, and we got quite far in 1 year. And we're going along developing it, and I'm getting things working, and it does a page flipping technique, much like your little rocket ship demo there, Steve, that you did this last week, to eliminate flicker. And so I was thinking that, man, I was blown away by the speed of assembly language. I'm like, oh, man, it's so fast. It goes through everything so fast. I was thinking that I could copy a 6K page and have like no, lag, but that didn't work. And so then we started to try and grab backgrounds and re-put them on the screen before you did the draw. And that got complicated real quick. And so then I learned about compiled sprites, I think from Hugo DeFort. And I got to tell you, compiling sprites is probably one of the most boring activities I've done in my life.
You doing by hand?
But I managed to get it back up to speed. So I am now able to copy the 6K page over and basically erase the background image and then redraw the sprites over it and then flip the page. So that's pretty cool. So I got it up to speed that way. But I took a break from it for a while just because, so to compile these sprites, I would take the image from my sprite editor that I made, and I would put them into an Excel file with like the bit order and everything, and then I would take that and then type the assembly by hand. And you're talking like, oh my gosh, lines and lines of assembly. My brother Tim came over and he's like, dude, how do you have this much time to do this? And I said, I don't even know. But so I took a break from that. And then as I was contacting you, Stevie, I finished up my PC game, Hotel Elevator Man. So, which I actually made for my nephew this last year. He asked my brother, he's obsessed with going to hotels or parking lots that have like elevators in them and pushing buttons and going up and down because he's autistic.
Okay.
So he asked my brother for elevator buttons for his birthday. And so I was like, man, I think we could probably make that happen. Order some buttons, put them together, make it kind of, I don't know, run a motor that vibrates to make it sound like you're going up there. Well, it's like $150 for a light panel for an elevator by itself.
Wow.
So then I got to thinking, well, the kid really likes Super Mario Brothers, right? So he loves platforming games. So I'm going to put hotel elevator buttons and platforming games together. and that's how Hotel Elevator Man came to be. And it was originally going to be a Color Computer 3 game, but I had till November to complete it, and my assembly language skills were just not up to speed to be able to complete it.
Okay, you had to reach a deadline of the actual birthday, so.
Yep. So I started GameMaker on PC. So
yeah, I tried a version of it that you sent me. It's pretty damn good, and I definitely, now that you and I are in a little bit better contact, I certainly want to schedule a time where we can really showcase, this product and other projects you're working on, and really look at some of these things, because it's interesting. Anything we can do that is for the CoCo or resembles the CoCo, is CoCo inspired, is definitely worth kind of celebrating and talking about, So
yeah, well, I sent it out to. I've had a lot of different players play it, and they really like the graphical, the way it looks graphically. And I said, well, it's based on a 16 color computer from back in 1986. So
right, it can. Can the program run full screen? I don't remember, because I can pull up the version that I have right now on my PC. Like if I launch it, will it run full screen or is it a window?
It's in a window.
Can I make that window any bigger?
I don't know. I've never tried.
All right, let me see if I can get it up right now. And
I gave you the install. Oh, okay. I should have given you the zip folder.
Well, this is an older one. This is one you sent me a while ago. I think you just sent me a new one. I'm not sure, or something.
I did, yeah, because I changed the fonts to be more pixelated, because like everything's really pixely and kind of retro looking, and the fonts were really smooth, like newer games. And I was like, well, that kind of doesn't really fit the mold. So I went back and I changed a lot of stuff, and I added a trophy for completing the unlockable level, the basement. Man, that thing takes. Yeah, that thing takes all to unpack there.
Grant Leedy has just joined us. Welcome, Grant. How you feeling?
So, I mean, we don't have to stay on the topic of that. I just wanted to talk.
Well, I mean, nobody can see what I'm doing right now but you guys. But yeah, I'll try to get it up and running, and once I get it up and running, I will then try to pull it up on the screen. Because, yeah, it's definitely very cool. It's very retro, like you say, retro platform inspired. And it's definitely CoCo-centric. And it looks like it could be on a CoCo and everything else. And it's something that's a little bit of interest to me as well. Because whenever I finally get into the point where I start developing quote-unquote real games, I'm definitely going to want to know tools I can do to make them run on other platforms too, so there's a broader audience or exposure for the program. So if you can take a game idea and do it on the CoCo and then make it run on Windows, even better. If you can make it where it can run on mobile, or web-based things like that, that's cool too. So that's something that it's way ahead of where I am, but it's something I'm ultimately going to want to do.
Yeah, and GameMaker actually will give you that capability. So I discovered it like 15 years ago. It was originally written by a guy in Denmark named Mark Overmars. And it used to be like $18 to get a full version of this thing. Mm-hmm. Well, Yo-Yo Games bought him out like, I don't remember how long ago that was. But now they've exploited the crap out of it, of course, But you can make games and things for mobile phones and Mac and everything else with this. But it's $150 now as opposed to $18. But yeah, it's a pretty cool tool, and it's something that I've wanted to incorporate on the CoCo for a really long time. So you can like design sprites and get sounds and things like that, and then you basically combine all these resources, and then it has a built-in programming language that you can design games and other things with. And I'd like to adapt that to the CoCo, but I'm not sure if it's something that it can really be a reality, just because of like memory limitations and things like that. So who knows?
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
This is John Strong. And,
hi, John.
First of all, I want to offer you help anytime you need some help on games. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Secondly, originally GameMaker, you could grab the resources to use in other things. I don't know what the current status is, because I've also looked at GameMaker, and my tools will do a little bit of what GameMaker will do. Could have saved you if you was a CoCo 3 for compiled sprites. I could have saved you a huge amount of time.
Oh, really?
Yes. But doing it yourself, it's a good way to learn about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what you're doing now with it. And
Go onto the elevator and press the space bar, Steve. Sorry to interrupt you, John.
There you go.
Oh no, that's
up?
fine.
That's
And
cute.
so, GameMaker
What's up?
has been out here. I do know originally written in Delphi, which is an Object Pascal. Grandson of Turbo Pascal, something like that, if you want to call it that. So I'm actually familiar with the tool set because I use the C++ version of it for my tools.
Oh, okay.
And so, and I do believe you're here in Michigan too.
Shoot.
And so, if it comes to a point that we'd actually need a, person-person meetup to help you, that might be possible.
Are you a Michigander, John? Where do you live?
Oh, I live over in Charlotte.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in Grand Rapids myself.
Yeah, actually, I told my wife about it. We was over in Grand Rapids yesterday.
Restart
Went to Costco.
R.
Screwed up. Yeah, it's cute. It's really cute.
Yeah, and so GameMaker has a lot of things. It has some limitations. I've looked at it, thought about making things with it, and I get distracted from it. But it's a good tool to learn game logic to put something together, and
it's definitely cute.
Yes.
Well, that's very cool of you to offer, John, because you've definitely, you've got a lot of cool tools, and you've offered to share your tools and techniques and time and talent with everybody. So that's very cool.
Yeah, we should work together, John. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been something I was kind of intending, and like you're on, like okay, I can do this before I forget it. I sometimes you have that slept since then syndrome.
Right.
But I'm enjoying seeing what you're doing, Paul, and continue to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like any project that's being developed for the CoCo. I don't care if it's a big, elaborate project, if it's a smaller project, if it's in BASIC, if it's in assembly, if it's hardware. If somebody's making something for the CoCo, I'm excited about it. And but there's a lot of things wrong with me too, probably. So, and it's great that there's a great kind of support structure here where everybody's willing to help out other people. Like you mentioned, Simon Jonason, he's helped out a million people, and he also talks about how Sockmaster helped him when he was learning assembly and taught him how to optimize and think outside of the box. And so it's kind of cool when people pay it forward and they learn something and then they share something. And I think at the end of the day it helps the entire community at large by us having the ability to create more content for us to all enjoy. And speaking of creating content, Ed Snyder has joined the text chat, and Ed Snyder's a guy we really need to get on Skype one of these days. Number one, just to hear his voice instead of just reading what he says. I almost feel like Ed is some type of phantom hacker that lives inside a computer, because I've never actually spoken to him, but he's like the ghost in a shell or something. But yeah, it'd be great to get Ed on here just to verbalize stuff and answer questions. But I would love to get Ed one day where we can sit down and talk about his vast array of projects and things he has created and things he continues to work on. That would be a great kind of show to have, where we just talk about all things Ed Snyder and CoCo hardware. So we really need to coax Ed into doing that with us one day.
Yeah,
indeed. Does he ever sleep?
Well, I do a lot of cases for him, and so I email him and stuff, but never ever talk to him. Verbally. So yes, Ed, would like to.
Right. All right. Well, why don't we jump in? Unless anybody else had anything they wanted to throw out there real quick, why don't we jump in and go through a dry run of setting up MAME to be a CoCo, because that's kind of the meat and potatoes what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about everything that's cool about it and everything that's kind of maybe not so cool about it. So where the hell did my am I still live streaming? I am. Yep. Hold on. Yeah, I need to move stuff around. All right, so I need to go back to a full screen situation here. And all right, so we're on a full screen. You know what? I am such an idiot. I had everything. Oh, it's over here maybe. to say I had everything in a browser window. I swear to God, I'm having a hard time managing two screens right now. Okay, there's my live stream. Here's the Facebook page. All right, here's MAME. All right, so let's talk about how do we get MAME going. And for the sake of simplicity and the sake of consistency, what I'm going to show you right now is what anybody else can do. There are many shades of MAME, you know, so you can talk about different forks. You can talk about some of the pre-release stuff that's being circulated right now where people are compiling the new versions and circulating those. And I actually want to be able to host those, but we're already halfway through June. By the end of June, the latest release, so you see right now, the current release is 0186 Bravo. Or beta, however you want to look at that. So B for Bravo, I think it's the military way to say it. So 186B is the current version you can download right now off the internets. And at the end of June, I believe the date was somewhere around June 28th, is when 187 is released. And I just think that's kind of funny because 187 is the police code for homicide. So, but 187 is going to be the build of MAME that officially supports the speech sound cartridge, as well as John Linville's, what is John's thing called? Super Game cartridge or Super Game module or something like that. It's the new ROM pack that will include the sound chip that is what John Linville is working on. And so that is also going to be able to be emulated, including the ROM that shows off the demo he brought to CoCo Fest. So his CoCo Fest ROM cartridge was playing a bunch of music on this new synthesizer chip. So that can also be emulated. And the moral of that story is, if anybody was concerned about, well, how can I develop a program for new sound hardware if I don't have access to the hardware? Well, technically you don't need it when you can emulate it. So it's a way to kind of try before you buy, get the program working. And Game Master, so Tim Lindner just chimed in. He says it's the Game Master cart, and it's released the last Wednesday of each month. Okay, so there you have it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to download, because my computer is 64 bits, I'm going to download the 64-bit version. Now I'll give you a quick little technical tip. How do you know if your computer runs 64 bits? Well, I can't tell you on a Mac because I don't have a Mac right now. But if you're and I'm so old school, I still call this my computer. I used to call it my computer, my documents, my network neighborhood, because I've been using Windows since like Windows, since DOS. So what now might say computer or PC, I still call my computer. If you do a right mouse click on my computer and you hit properties, you're going to see a pop-up that's going to tell you how much memory you have. And if your operating system is 64 bits, it will say right here it's a 64-bit operating system. If it doesn't say 64 bits, then it's not, because I don't know if some of the older versions of like Windows XP and Windows Vista and Windows 7, I don't think they actually specified that they were 32 bits, but they would always specify if they were 64 bits. So if you're not sure, there's where you can check. So I'm going to download MAME, and this is the Windows binaries. So this is MAME 64 EXE. I'm going to download this, and I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And
Steve, another easy way to tell is if your operating system recognizes more than 4 gigs of memory.
If you have more, if you have more than 4 gigs of RAM too, because 32 bits only goes up to 4 gigs. Sure, good point there. Yeah. All right. So now, this one is not. This one is not. Okay, so this will self-extract. So is it going to go to users desktop? Will it create the MAME folder, or is it going to throw it all in my desktop? Let me just type in the word MAME just in case, because I'm not sure what the hell's going to happen here. All right. So yeah. All right. So I'm extracting MAME to my desktop, and I should have here in just a minute. I should have MAME installed. And right now, MAME by itself is not very useful. Okay, so here's my MAME folder. I don't know if I'm going to have MAME inside of MAME. No, I don't. All right, so here's my MAME folder. And in my MAME folder here, this is where I would launch MAME 64. And right now, if I just launch MAME 64, and it just showed up on a whole different window. I need to see if I can drag it over here. All right, so this is MAME 64. I don't know what the hell I just launched here. All right, no driver loaded. I've got nothing loaded in MAME right now. Now, the thing about MAME is that MAME, the way it's licensed is you're not allowed to distribute ROMs with MAME. It's against the open source agreement. And so MAME is like, listen, our job is to emulate the hardware. There's a lot of gray areas. Some of them are moral, some of them are legal as far as can I distribute a ROM, things like that. So technically anything that's on a ROM file is copyright and belongs to someone or something. Your ability to use it will vary. Your mileage may vary. I believe the general statement is that if you own the original hardware, technically you're allowed to have a backup of the ROMs that are in there, but this is not a legal show, folks. So let's just say that, you know, if you didn't buy it and you don't own it, then technically it's kind of, you know, you're kind of like breaking a law or stealing or copyright infringement or something on old stuff, right? So anyways, we have MAME open. What you need to be able to do with MAME is in the ROMs folder is where you need to stick the ROMs. Now, if we were going to run MAME to be an arcade system, this is where we would put Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and all the ROM files to play those games. But we're not going to play games. We're going to use MAME as mess. So we have to get the ROMs. And by the way, the links to all of these is in the description to this video. And once again, the ROMs that I'm going to show you here, these are available to download, but just realize there are certain moral and legal considerations to do when doing this. So I'm not here to give legal advice, but let's just, you know, to be honest, there's a lot of crap people get off the internet, right? So this is being hosted on the Color Computer Archive. These are the various ROMs for the various color computers that you will need to stick into our ROMs folder. So as I go to download each of these, what I'm going to do just to make my life a little bit easier is I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go into that MAME folder, and I'm going to go into my ROMs folder, and I'm going to download them and save them here. So I have CoCoZip. CoCoZip will emulate a stock CoCo 1. Then there's CoCo 2, and that emulates, I think, a 64K Color Computer 2. There is CoCo 2 Bravo, and this one emulates the CoCo 2 with the upgraded VDG that has better looking fonts and supports lowercase. There's CoCo 3. CoCo 3, of all things, emulates a CoCo 3. Probably the DW1 is DriveWire, right? I would imagine. We'll download it for cramps and giggles. We'll just stick it in here. Now there's CoCo 3H. This is the one that emulates the Hitachi 6309 processor. I have no idea what CoCo 3P does.
PAL.
PAL. Okay, PAL. Then there's a CoCo E. So is that a CoCo 1E or something? I don't know. CoCo Enhanced? Who the hell knows? CoCo with a direct connect modem. No freaking idea there. So I guess that emulates the modem hardware. CoCo Orchestra 90. This is the emulating of the Orchestra 90 stereo output card. This is the speech sound pack that was just emulated. We just talked about this last week from Tim Lindner, right? So we're downloading speech sound pack. What is a CP400? Was that a computer?
Yes. That was a South American Brazilian, I think, or something. A CoCo clone?
Okay. So it's the CoCo clone. Okay. So we'll down with a floppy drive controller. We'll download these for craps and giggles. And then we have a Dragon 32 and a Dragon 64. So I'm downloading more CoCo crap than I need. But I'm basically downloading all these different ROMs here. And they're being stored in the ROMs folder under MAME. So now MAME should be able to emulate a CoCo. Now I'm hoping that MAME will run. Now I'm having a slight issue here where MAME is showing up as a full screen. So here's what I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to do one of Tim Lindner's tricks that I learned last week, and this is a way to do a command line. So I need to go into my desktop. I don't know what the hell my desktop folder is. It's Steve. All right, so here's the MAME folder I'm doing in a command prompt, and I believe it's MAME 64.exe-cc. And what that's going to do is that's going to generate the MAME ini file. And so I've just used a command line utility to generate a MAME ini file. And somewhere in here, I want to tell this bloody thing to not go full screen so I can move it around. I just have to find it. Here's where you set all your paths to everything. Autosave. I don't know where all these settings are. And this is, again, we can already start to say, dude, this is a huge pain in the ass. It's so much easier to run VCC, which I would agree with you. But part of the setting up to this thing here is you know, just getting it tweaked and then not having to deal with it again. Somewhere in here is the frickin' option to not run full screen, and I don't know where the hell that option is. Miscellaneous options, video options, video is auto, window is 0. Let's change the window to 1. All right, so this will...
And I would recommend the maximize to 0.
Okay, so that was towards the end. Window to 1, maximize to 0.
Yeah, because I can't stand the window being just like you had it full screen, so...
Right. Okay, so window 1, that's meaning true or on. We're saying yes, run in a window, and no, don't maximize. Okay, so now we've saved those 2 settings. And again, these are some one-time tweaks. Now I should be able to double-click MAME 64. Okay, and then here it is. Now MAME shows up. Damn it, it's showing up on my other screen. I don't want you on my other screen, D-bag. Now, what is MAME designed to do? MAME is designed to emulate pretty much every system on the planet. And so it's now trying to run every game for every system. So what am I going to do right now to make this more CoCo friendly? I'm going to type in the word Color Computer. Now, do you see where it says Color Computer here? I am now going to click on the little star here, and I'm going to add that to my favorites. Then I'm going to do the same thing for all these sub flavors here. So Color Computer 2, Color Computer 2B, Color Computer 3 NTSC, Color Computer 3 NTSC with the Hitachi. What is HBD DOS? That's one of the ones.
That's the drive wire one.
Okay. And then if I wanted to, I could also then type in Dragon. Dragon 32, maybe. Yeah, so now I could take Dragon 32, I could star that. I can then go back and type in Dragon 64, and then I could star that. Dragon 64, I'll star. Dragon 64, starred. Okay, now I've basically favorited everything. If I click on favorites, now I've got a short list. And so now instead of looking at every system and game in the universe that MAME can emulate, I can go to favorites. Now I've got my short little list here. Now, before you launch any of these machines here too, this is where you could also set some configuration options before you launch it. Like under Color Computer, if I go to Configure Machine, this is where I could do some one-time setups here, like device mapping. Is this where you told me to go, David,
yes,
to turn off the mouse? So if you go to device mapping and device mouse assignment, if you turn that off, and I go to previous menu, I have now...
Save the machine.
Save the machine. Save machine configuration. Configuration saved. And will that do it for all the machines?
Nope.
It should.
Yeah, it's machine basis.
All right. So let's return to previous menu. So we'll go here. We'll go to configure machine. And so if I go to configure machine, double click, device mapping. No, it's there. Because they're children of the CoCo parent. I think they automatically get that. Now, what else do I want to mess with here? There's another wacky thing about MAME, right? There is this user interface went offline.
You seem to be fine.
Well, I just restreamed it. All right, guys. I don't know what happened. My live stream went offline. I don't remember where we left off on this. So I'll probably record a separate how-to video. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff live right now. And so we have the Color Computer up. I just saw somebody say on the screen, are you guys not there? Because I can't see the chat, let me do something real quick. I want to copy the chat to the screen here. So I'm switching screens here for just a second. I want to copy this. And then now when I go back to my full screen, I'm going to paste this. All right. Okay, so now I can kind of watch the chat while things are going on. Yeah, all right. So I don't remember where the hell we just left off. So let me just close this and let me start over. All right. And there's just weird stuff going on with MAME. And to be honest, the way I've been running MAME that I learned from Tim is I've been running MAME from a command line. And so MAME automatically launches the way I want it to. I don't have to deal with a lot of these GUI things here. So let's just try this again for the benefit of anybody who's missed this. So if you missed the part where I said you have to download all the ROMs, all your CoCo ROMs need to be in the ROMs folder. And I downloaded those from the Color Computer archive. The next thing I did when I went to MAME and I launched MAME, so MAME kind of comes up here in its own little window here, and I'll go ahead and maximize it over here. So what I did is I took all the color computers and I favorited them. So I went to where it says all. I did a search up here for like color computer. And then from here, I just went to each of these and I clicked on it and I hit the star, and that adds them to the favorite. I don't know if that got in the stream. Once I go to my list of favorites, it's easier to see just the color computer list, right? So another thing we did is once I highlighted color computer, I went to configure machine, double click that, I went to device mapping, and we actually turned off the mouse mapping. So the color computer emulation does not map the mouse. You then have to do save machine configuration. And then the good point about this is that now when I run my CoCo, it will automatically run. Now, what was it? Control F? Was that what Tim was saying, that you can launch the machine right away? I don't know. I'm not sure what Control F is now showing me the MAME mouse. I don't know what's going on here. Anyways, if I run a Color Computer 2 now, and now I have to hit Start Empty. And once again, I don't know why my computer's making this pop up on the other screen. I got to keep moving over. This is an option here. What is this option here? We need to turn this off in the ini file where it displays game information. Something like that. We'll turn that crap off. All right, so here's MAME. Now, what if I want to load a file into MAME? This is another challenge with MAME, right? So right now, the user interface is not enabled in a way where I can even get to my file menu. So you have to press, what is it?
Scroll lock?
Scroll lock, right? So once I press scroll lock, I get a message here that says we're in partial emulation. Now I can hit tab. And now from tab, this is where you can change a few more things. And actually what I want to do here too is I want to change what the pause key is. And so right now if I press P on the keyboard, that actually pauses the screen. Once you go into partial emulation, or partial keyboard emulation, which is, by the way, what you need in order to load up files and stuff, you kind of lose skip game info. Okay, Tim says it's skip game info. So yeah, I want to get rid of that skip game info. So what I did here is I press scroll lock. I'm going to go into, is it input general? Under user interface, there is something I want to find here. Okay, so the pause key. I don't want the pause key to be the P key. So I'm going to click on pause. I'm going to hit delete to delete the configuration. I'm going to click on pause again. And then I actually press the pause key on. No, my name is not Nick Marentes.
That's all right. You'll grow into it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're back. And so another one of the challenges of MAME, and this is not MAME's fault, although there's plenty of things we can fault MAME for, but certain keys I'm pressing on my freaking keyboard to deal with the myriad of MAME keys that must be configured are causing my freaking stream software to stop streaming. So I just had to turn off all the hotkeys in my streaming software so I quit stopping the streams. I don't remember when the stream stopped. Thank you, somebody, for watching that and let me know.
Right as soon as you hit P, apparently.
So one thing I did is I changed the pause key from the P key to the actual pause button on my keyboard. So now if I want to pause the game on my PC keyboard, there's a pause key. Another key I want to change here is one that's called UI cancel. And I don't want to accidentally escape too many times. So when I double click UI cancel, I'm going to change this to numpad minus, because that is that's actually what Eric Gavrilik recommended that he uses. He was chatting with me on Facebook and said, yeah. All right. So what do I have right now? I've got MAME that works. And MAME's in a window, and I can move MAME around, and I can actually move my mouse inside and outside of MAME. So it's, as Nick calls it, I can now multitask. So now I have got MAME emulation. How would you load a disk in MAME? Well, if you are in the, we need to get out of this menu now, right? So let's hit, what is it, previous menu? Lord have mercy.
Escape.
Or no, it's not that. No, because what happens is, okay, here we go. Return to previous menu, and then so return to machine. So let's try it again. I want to take it from the top, this time with feeling. If I'm here and I press tab, this is the main pop-up, and this is where I would go to File menu. Then I would go to my floppy, And then this is where I would browse to where I want to load a floppy disk. So again, there's work involved here, right? So to browse through your GUI and do all of these things here. So if I, I don't even remember where I have half of my crap stored. So anyway, so yeah, somewhere on my C drive, under users, I have stuff in my Google Drive, right? So if I go to users, I go to Steve, I go to Google Drive, and then I go to my MAME here. And then somewhere in here is a program called Steve Disk, right? Isn't there? I don't know. I'm hallucinating.
You can type the first few letters and it should find it if it is there.
Steve Disk. Okay. And then I can say read write. All right. Now I've loaded the disk. Now this disk is in here and I type in dir and I can see, oh, and this has got the noise too. This has actually got the floppy noise. So now here's my program, right? And so like one of my most recent programs that I demoed was Fonts 3. And this is going to load up my fonts. But yeah, so can you launch the CoCo in a MAME? Yes. Can you get MAME to then load in your files? Absolutely. Is it elegant? Absolutely not, right? Okay, who's chatting right now? So we have Michael Brandt. Once again, not a good day for streaming. Okay, we're back up. Hello, everyone. Bosco is here. Okay, hello, Bosco. Sixy here. There we go. So a few people are chatting. All right, so this is, and then now, how do I get out of this? The CoCo emulation, you can press the End key to get out. But because I also turned off Escape as my exit UI command, I can also press Escape. Oh, no, I didn't. Son of a biscuit. It made a liar out of me. Ah, crap. Did that not get saved?
No, I think you forgot to delete the line before setting.
Okay. So yeah. So herein lies the challenge, right? Is that MAME has lots of idiosyncrasies to it. So now that I've kind of showed you what you got to do to get it going, and we lost the stream 500 times, so I don't know where the hell that begins and ends, but here's how I'm running MAME for myself right now. I've actually got MAME in my Google Drive folder, so I can pull it up from anywhere. So when I go to my MAME folder, I've created a launcher file that I kind of borrowed from Tim. And so I got to find, okay, so I've got this file here that launches the CoCo. And so if I was to make my font a little bigger here, just so you guys can read it, yeah, format. Let's turn on word wrap too. So basically, I'm launching MAME or MESS. I'm launching CoCo 2, which is the ROM file I want to launch. I'm turning on an external multi-pack. I'm putting the speech sound pack in slot 3. I'm doing a skip game info. I'm making it run in a window. I'm making the user interface active, which is the partial emulation. And then I am also mounting floppy disk 1 to my disk. So it's steve.dsk. So this is a little launcher file that I run now. I don't run MAME through the GUI anymore. I run it this way. So when I run my CoCo launch bat, what I get, and of course mine is not, I can't multitask in this one. I wasn't able to figure that one out in MESS. And maybe it's because this is a hybrid compilation. I don't know. It's not the full library. But in this one here, this launches my program, launches it in a window, and when I type in dir, my floppy disk is here, all right? And so I have been able to make MAME work for me. And so you can already see here, is there a lot of work involved to set this thing up? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It is not an out-of-the-box configuration at all. But I think anybody who's familiar with MAME, so if you've never run an emulator before and you're learning this for the first time, this might not be the first pill you want to swallow. But if you've used MAME to play arcade games, and I believe a lot of people had, this isn't a far stretch from going from launching Pac-Man to launching a CoCo. But because now we're running a computer, there's a lot more things you got to do. You got to be able to open up files, and you have to deal with the funky keys and the overlay menus and the user interface. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things about MAME that we could sit here and just tear apart and chastise and everything else. And it is such a complex animal, and it does so many things. It's really hard for this to be the perfect CoCo emulator. But when it comes to actually doing the emulation, it's probably one of the better ones. And when it comes to being able now to support the multi-pack interface with the speech sound cartridge and John Linville's sound card, it is literally the only one who can do that right now. So I think anybody who's going to be developing software can probably handle getting MAME off the ground. If you're a casual user, this might not be the emulator you start with. But if you're a developer, I think you can handle this. Will you use this to develop new software? That then becomes the question. Are we going to start developing new things to take advantage of the speech sound cartridge? Will we try to develop things to run on a cartridge and test those waters and maybe develop something on a cartridge? Will we try to develop things to take advantage of new sound? The technology is here now for us to try it. I know this took probably longer than it needed to take, and it sounded a lot more confusing than it did, and the fact I kept losing my stream didn't make things any easier. I will try to record a step-by-step video and simplify this process as much as possible. But at the end of the day, yeah, we can sit here and come up with a million reasons why there's things to bitch about with this program. I'm not going to defend that because you just saw me struggle. So, but I will say that I like it, and I plan to keep using it. So that's my.
Once you get it up and running, it's good. But it's with great power comes great responsibility. There's a lot of setup because there's so many options.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about the sound cart support and sound speechback support now is because MAME also has a built-in debugger where you can do like memory traces, live running of code, set breakpoints and watch points and everything else. Is that it's great as a developer tool.
No, definitely. Yeah, the debugging capability, right? And so, yeah, so somebody just mentioned just as soon as I get an actual SSC. Well, yeah, but see, that's the thing. Speech sound cartridges are very difficult to come across, 60. So, yeah, you could look for one, but the reality is you kind of don't need to because you can emulate the speech sound cartridge and you can develop for it and not have the real thing. Now, one of the things that we did discover even in our first demonstration of the speech sound pack is there are some slight differences because it's being emulated, and you guys can probably speak better to this than I could because I don't understand how hardware and assembly works. But speech sound pack is coming through the DAC, and so is the joystick controller, and so certain times you have to change your polling between sound and between input. And that is something that I guess you don't notice in real hardware, but there was a slight hiccuping sound, like when the music loops on Pitfall 2, you can hear a small chirping sound when it loops. Now, Tim Lindner says that's something he was aware of, and I think that's something that will probably get better with time, which is why there's already a second version of the 187 out already. So is it going to be as perfect as the real hardware? Maybe not 100%, but we'll let you test and do a proof of concept that you can develop for it. I would say absolutely, right? My naive brain, right? All right, so Nick Marentes, you ready to get out the fire hose and squirt all over this?
VCC.
I got three letters
That's all
for
you
you.
say.
I was wondering how long it was going to take for that one.
Yeah. Hey, Grant, are you with us? I see his face. Grant, do you read me?
He's been in the chat.
I'm not
He
watching.
might be
the chat.
muted. Or maybe he's in a noisy environment and can't share his mic at the moment.
Yeah. So, yeah, is MAME for the faint of heart? Maybe not. But should MAME be considered by developers? I think we should all give it a shot.
Now that you're here, why don't you go to the Mesh UI page and put that on, and redo the whole thing with Mesh UI.
Okay.
Do a search for Mesh UI. Download the single file, copy it into MAME, and run that, and do what you were doing just now.
Well, I'll save us the download struggle because I have it somewhere.
Yes, Steve, I'm here. I had my mic muted accidentally.
Okay, how are you?
Doing good, thank you.
All right. Well, how you recovering well?
Yes, I am almost 100%.
Very good, very good. All right, so we'll try this again now. I'm going to try switching over to full screen. All right, so here's Mesh UI, Nick. I have Mess UI on the screen. So Mess UI, and there's probably a MAME UI as well. And this is kind of a front-end loader that should make things a little bit easier to launch. So here's Color Computer 2 on Mess. Should I go ahead and run this?
Just let people see some of the options that you were changing before, I guess.
All right. Well, I'm not as familiar with this one because I don't use it.
Just right-click on CoCo 2.
Okay.
And do
like properties.
Yeah, properties for CoCo 1 and 2. The next one down. Yeah, the very bottom one. What does that bring up?
Well, we have things like run in a window, run in a window, start out maximize.
You do want to run in a window, don't you?
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We don't want to be maximized, right?
Yeah. Okay.
How do you get the menu to pop up? Okay. Controller mapping. This is where we would turn off mouse.
Yeah. Is that the one you got to turn off? Yeah.
Yeah, mouse device turn off.
Yep.
All right.
What else is there?
Yeah, you can tell it what screen to work on. There is a way triple buffering, VSync, refresh.
Yeah, no, that's all MAME stuff. Oh, there is another feature that is nice. Oh, we'll go
look
back.
at this, and this already has now. This has the menu across the top.
Yeah.
So I've got file.
Click on media.
Media. This is where I can load in a floppy disk. Okay.
And mount a file.
Mm-hmm. And then you would browse.
Wherever your
and
files
and now we're using the Windows GUI instead of the MAME GUI. And is this better? Hell yeah, it's better. Right? So now I could go into Google Drive. I can go to my MAME. I could look for like my Steve disk.
All now, has Mess UI been ported to Mac or Linux yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, so right now this is a Windows-only solution.
Yeah. Okay. So the one thing that I think I'm seeing here is that depending on the screen scaling is not perfect of the fonts, but that's minor, right? That's probably an option somewhere too for the screen for the aspect ratios. But I notice when I have kind of a wonky resolution that my fonts look a little distorted.
Yeah, that's
now that
that's
now that I'm full size, it's fine. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mess UI is definitely a little bit more user friendly.
Close that. Go back to the main menu again. And right click on CoCo 2.
Yeah.
Properties again. The very bottom. Well, that's for the CoCo 2. Go to screen. Is it
aspect
screen
ratio?
Or maybe it's advanced. I can't remember now. That one. Yeah, down the bottom, select effect.
Oh, this is where you can do things like the
just pick the scan lines one. That one.
Right.
And open and apply OK. And now run CoCo 2.
Yeah.
And enlarge that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so now it looks like it has scan lines on it.
It's sort of, anyway. There's a few other effects you can choose.
There's some RGB ones. There's a few others, right? So, yeah, no, that's that. I remember doing that just on arcade emulation too. So yeah, some of those effects of the UI. So if you're running MAME or you're running Mess, there has historically been a MAME UI or a Mess UI that you could tap into on top of that. And does it make it easier? It does. So what is if there is a downside to this, if anything, I guess, or should we issue a disclaimer? Because the UI is not always developed on the same release cycle, or maybe it is, I don't know, but you have to keep them in. You have to keep them in sync, right? You have to make sure you've got the version of the UI that matches the actual release of MAME or Mess that you're running, right? So, having this little menu here with media and insert a cartridge cart, right? So cassette printout. So I am not sure how you would actually tell it to run a multi-pack though from here. That's probably a minor deal though, right? So edit, paste.
Would that be the options for the CoCo 2 that you saw in the main menu?
Possibly.
Well, I think the normal DOS UI is still there. If you do a scroll lock, you do go back to that menu as well.
All right, let's try this. And again, is this going to be literal to where, okay, so if I go to edit and I go to paste, look at this. I'm actually pasting in from a text file. So that's something too that you can do in MAME, but you got to go into your menu and then you have to do a paste UI, right? So there is a way to do this in MAME. So if there's a moral to this story, is MAME UI or MES UI a nice way to kind of cheat the emulator and make it easier for us human beings? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I like it. I like it. I'm not going to diss this at all. Pretty good. Pretty good. So, yeah, MES UI is pretty good. So, not bad. I think the only thing that you have to be aware of is that MES UI will not necessarily always be on the same release schedule and on the same versions as the official version. So you just have to make sure it matches that. The version that go ahead.
I think a lot of the MES UIs will still work anyway. It's just that if they've added new features in MAME, MES UI may not support it. So hence, if you keep up with the MES UI, it should support it.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's just a front-end loader for MAME anyway.
It's just a single file. Yeah, just copy it in that directory, away you go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, and the fact that you have a menu bar on top of your emulator already makes it look a little bit more like XROAR or VCC, right?
Yeah.
So, no, bravo. This is good. And the fact I can move my mouse inside and outside of the emulator, which I hadn't figured out how to do before. Nice feature. So, MAME. Yes, I've already got a headache from this. And so, I like MAME. I like MAME. I would like to say that I would like to be a champion for MAME. But I also live in the world that I see MAME and I use MAME, and I can't lie about the things about MAME that aren't necessarily that
its ease of use needs help.
Yes, so
and really that's its main problem. MAME is the better emulator. It's just its ease of use. It is atrocious.
Yeah.
So, it was written by developers for developers, basically, is the UI that's built in.
Yeah.
And even then, it's a pain in the butt.
and that UI is a somewhat newer feature because it didn't exist in up to the 015s or whenever it was. I forgot when the UI became a thing. But there was a time when MAME was a command line prompt thing, and you almost had to use the MAME UIs back then to launch MAME because nobody wanted to run every game from a command line. Cool stuff. Let's move over to something that's not about MAME. And we will talk about, since we have Nick Marentes here, maybe we can talk about the latest blog post of Gunstar and talking about computer sound. And then we also are planning on talking about looking at the latest Pac-Man port that's going on right now too, So Nick, and by the way, Nick, is Gunstar able to be accessed from the Nick Marentes project site? Because I think I looked for that in the past and didn't see it.
Not in the project site. No, I only put the completed projects in that. It's only from the blog because it's in development. Okay. So then in that case, I'll have to put a separate link to that on my page because I wasn't sure. I tried finding it on your main page and I didn't find it. Okay. Yeah, once it's completed, there will be a project entry, but it's not finished yet.
He just does that to make it an extra work project for Steve. So
it's still vaporware.
Vaporware. Oh man. So so this is your latest blog entry where you're really getting into talking about how you want to produce sound on here, and I haven't finished reading it yet. But do you want to give us the short version of this since we have you on the phone?
VCC. No, it's
Nitrous 9.
Nitrous 9.
Yeah, not a lot. It's only a small chapter, but there was a lot of work in the background to get to this point. I mean, trying to you got to find the right sound samples to use. That meant trawling the internet looking for for sound samples, and of which there's thousands of them on the net.
Oh yeah.
So it's a matter of finding the right ones, the ones that aren't too long, the ones that have that right sound. Collecting all those, then I had to write software to import them into the Color Computer, downscale them from usually 16-bit sounds down to 6-bit sounds, trimming them so they're not too long, because getting all the samples to fit into memory, allocating a memory block for it, getting the program in its current state to load it, and then writing a sound routine to play them. And what I did in this current version is I've set up in the program buttons that you can press, one to whatever, and you press those and it triggers a specific sound sample. Okay. And it lets you press 2 buttons, so because it's got a two channel sound generator, it will whichever button I press, it allocates the new sound onto the next available free channel, which isn't being used. Okay. So you can actually press a button twice and it'll play it twice.
Neat.
So it's to simulate what it will sound like in the actual game. And part of the test also it doesn't show it in the sample I did there, but part of the test was actually having the memory copy routine that I had in the last chapter, the one that was taking up so much CPU time. Okay. I actually had that running as well as the sound routine. So, I wanted to see what putting the two most CPU intensive tasks, to see how much time they both took up, how much time I was left over for the game, and whether everything worked correctly together, which it all did. So the sound effects test that you hear there is just the sound that you're hearing, but the video, the computer is actually doing the big copy from the previous chapter as well. So if you want to run the sample,
I'll have to share audio with you guys.
You'll have to share the audio, yeah.
Object collected. I like that. Smart Blum energy blast.
That sounded like somebody rage quitting MAME.
That's right. And they won.
That sounds like a real space shooter right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. And as the chapter said, look, Ma, no sound chip.
Yeah.
That's one thing I want to discuss. Like, what is the advantages and disadvantages of the sound chip projects versus doing the digitized sound? And I think that's a nice thing to cover, because there's advantages and disadvantages to each depending on what you want to do in your game.
That's right. Now, for sound effects, it's great. You can just take a digital sample of something that sounds like a real explosion or a real gunfire, or even someone speaking. You have a real voice if you want. And the sound routine plays those sounds. So that sounds a lot better than the basic sound chips that you have. You can easily tell something that uses the sound chip versus something that uses real sounds. The disadvantage, though, is that it is a CPU intensive task. The computer has to run the sound routine via interrupts in the background as well as the actual game. And depending on the game, if you have a game that uses a lot of CPU cycles, then you have very little left over for the sound. As it is, I've got it set to do a two voices. When I try to include music, well, that started becoming just a bit too much. And the only way to try and get around that is to lower the actual playback rate or the sample rate of the sound. But then you can get away with the lower sample rate when you have gunshots and explosions and stuff, because they are generally a fairly rough sound. But when you're playing music, it doesn't sound very good when you lower the fidelity of a note, of a musical note, for example. Then it really starts sounding bad. So it was a choice. Do I want to have sound effects, or do I want to have music? And I figured there's no way I want to play the game without the gunshots and the general mayhem that you hear. That's a priority one. That has to go in there. Music, that is where a sound chip comes in handy, because a sound chip takes over the burden of or that CPU interaction that's needed to play music. Is most of that's taken over by the sound chip that can then generate a more high fidelity tone. Now the problem I was thinking is, okay, well, maybe I can just have a mixture of both. Why not have the digital sound samples coming out of the DAC, since I can do some really great sound effects there, and have support for a sound chip. So if you have a sound chip or a sound cartridge or whatever, then you've got the best of both worlds. You've got great sound effects, and you can have great music playing in the background. If you don't have a sound cartridge, well, at least you'll have the great sound effects. Problem: you can't mix the sound from the cartridge port via the cartridge connector called sound in. You can't mix that sound source with the DAC. It's one or the other. The only way to mix them is that you've got to run external cables from the sound cartridge out, mixed in with the audio coming out of the color computer, mix them in and put them into the same cable, or just run a separate set of amplifiers in order to have both sounds running. So yeah, it's a real problem that you can't mix both of them, have the best of both worlds running at once. So currently I'm running the game just using the DAC sound samples, because I really do like the sound effects. I don't think that the sound chips, well, the current sound chips can actually make that sort of sound. Well, they can. You can use the sound chip sort of like a DAC, but then that defeats the whole purpose of saving CPU cycles, because that would be CPU intensive if you wanted to try play a sample. So for this project at this stage, I'm going to use the DAC.
Okay.
So that's the plus and minuses of using either.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to get into, because like you said, if you can have really good digital effects, which take a lot of CPU time, or if you have a game that you want to concentrate solely on graphics and you want a musical background, you can run the sound chip, and basically it takes almost no CPU time at all. But we have no current easy way to mix both because of the limitations of the way the sound's routed through the color computer, or the limitations of the sound chips themselves. I mean, there's some newer sound chips that somebody could incorporate that can handle this kind of stuff, but as far as I know, nobody's doing that at this point. And a lot of people want, period-specific type sound chips, like the ones that were available back in the 80s. If that limitation was lifted and somebody used a newer one, then you might be able to tell the chip, do some samples or load some samples to the chip and have it play it in the background too, which would kind of be the best of both worlds, but more costly.
Yeah, I think a lot of the arcade machines back in the day that used, say, the same chips as what we're seeing now, usually had a second processor running those chips as well. So you could create more complicated sound effects by devoting another CPU solely to control the sound chips. So you could get really good sound, but you are talking about a multi-processor board layout. We unfortunately only have one processor that's trying to do everything. So everything, plus the fact we don't have sprites, we don't have all these other fancy things that a lot of the proper arcade machines may have had. So our CPU is doing a lot of work. So
yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's also impressive when you're able to overcome all those limitations.
Well, that's the challenge. Okay, they're the limitations. How can we overturn them?
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, it's just great to know that commercial quality games are still being developed. You know, we have Rick Adams working on stuff. We have John Strawn working on stuff. We have Nick Marentes. Probably a good segue to switch over and look at the Pac-Man that's in development too. That's one of the things we were talking about wanting to show too. So this is Glen Hewlett is working on porting the arcade Pac-Man to the CoCo, what he calls transcoding, which is similar to what Sockmaster did for Donkey Kong, where you basically take all the original Z80 code and you rewrite it to run on the CoCo in 6809 assembly, and then having to emulate a few pieces of hardware that aren't there. So it's a similar project to kind of like porting Donkey Kong to the CoCo. And this is his latest video that he posted where he's showing the real Pac-Man running next to the CoCo Pac-Man, and you'll notice some very slight timing differences, and it has to do with the timing refresh of the various screens, where I think he said the arcade screen ran at like 60.66 megahertz, and the CoCo is a hard 60, so we fall out of sync a little bit, but it's not even a question of the CPU at this point. But here's the screen, and on the right is the real Pac-Man running in MAME, and on the left is the CoCo Pac-Man running in MAME, and you'll see that they start off being about the same speed, but the one on the left starts to get a little tiny bit behind, but not by much. And again, if you weren't watching these things side by side, you'd probably never notice it, you know. But just
and the other thing to notice is the vertical scrolling, because
right, which is neat. That's a pretty clever thing to do, because most people just shrink the screen to fit to the CoCo resolution, you know. Yeah, there was no sound there, but it's definitely interesting, and it's come a long way, because in some of his earlier videos, the ghosts weren't even individually colored. They all started off being around the same color. So now he's got these ghosts in different colors. It's looking like they're moving in front of and behind each other, so his sprite routines are definitely fleshing out some more as well. I think the only thing it's missing right now is some of the text, like the credit 0 on the bottom and the high score and stuff on the top, which is probably doable, but probably lower on the priority scale. But it's definitely cool stuff. A lot of cool projects happening right now. A lot of cool stuff. A lot of good reasons to be excited about your CoCo.
Yeah, and it's also, it finally fills Sockmaster's dream when he released Donkey Kong. He wanted to see other people try to port real arcade games like he did, and it took a decade, but we're starting to see it. There's also the Tutankhamen one that's partly ported, runs sideways, doesn't have sound, but it looks really good too.
McDougal is porting things too, like Night Lore and things like that. Yeah, Space Invaders, there was a project where Space Invaders was getting ported. So yeah, no, it's very cool.
We actually have our own CoCo MAME now. It's a lot easier to use.
We could emulate games on the CoCo itself. So pretty cool stuff. Wayne Campbell has joined us. Hey, Wayne, how are you? Glad you could make it. Yeah, good stuff. So I think we've talked about a lot of things today. We've definitely we definitely dug into all that is MAME. I think what I will wait to do is when MAME 187 becomes official, I'll probably do a video then, and just how to get MAME running on a CoCo, and then I think some of the things you do in MAME are better served by running the launch script, the command line script, where you can specify some of these parameters all in one shot and not have to do tweaks to it. But to each their own. And I definitely can see the benefit of using the MAME UI, which is the kind of shell wrapper interface for MAME or MES that makes it a little bit easier to get to it and gives you that top menu bar. The media menu, where you can insert a disk, is definitely easier than the native MAME user interface. The ability to copy and paste from that drop-down menu is also a nice little feature. So those are kind of like some training wheels that kind of soften the curve and soften the process to doing it, and those definitely need to be acknowledged and applauded. And you just have to bear in mind that they need to be relatively in sync with the MAME release as well, so you have full benefit of whatever new features come along. But yeah, nice touch having that added user interface to the systems.
Yeah, and hopefully it gets ported to the Mac and Linux pretty soon too, so they can enjoy the same better ease of use.
Oh yeah, that's interesting that the UI is a Windows only thing, huh?
Yeah. I mean, way back when MAME used to have the best user interface of them all. It was dead easy. And then when they switched to SDL, that just all disappeared. And I haven't looked to see whether anybody's doing an active port of it or not. Bill, you were mentioning that you were kind of familiar with it. Do you know is there a port being made of the MES UI for Mac OS X and Linux?
Well, there is the SDL MES interface, but that's quite far behind in the versions of the actual MAME involved. It's kind of probably about 2 or 3 years out of date.
Oh, years? Okay.
Yeah, we're talking years. Yeah, I actually stopped using that SDL MES and just use the raw interface for now until someone or somebody actually creates one.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I'm cheating. I'm just running the Windows version under Fusion under Mac OS X, so I'm kind of running Windows and Mac at the same time and MES under that.
Yeah, I do have it that way as well, but for when I'm actually doing it straight on the Mac side, I just use the straight command line interface.
Okay.
Right. What is a nice thing about some of these enhancements to MAME too is that if you're going to do the Raspberry Pi implementation of the CoCo, which is based on MAME, these new features will get rolled out to that as well. So the support for the speech sound cartridge will be there. The support for the Super Game module will be there. So some of these newer features will automatically be rolled into and be part of the CoCo Pi project too, which is kind of cool. So there's some benefits to having that consistent platform. And CoCo Pi, which is running on a Raspberry Pi, which is a flavor of Linux, is kind of a testament to the kind of, for all the things that suck about MAME, the fact that it's cross-platform compatible and you can run MAME on Linux and Raspberry Pi and Mac OS and Windows, that is definitely a nice feature that is missing from VCC.
The other nice thing about MAME is that it's actively developed. Now, sometimes that backfires and somebody breaks something on a release, but it's actively being updated all the time. So you have a good chance of getting bugs fixed, good chance of new features being added, and that's one of the problems that VCC and some of the other ones have had too. So they're not being actively updated.
And I think because of the complexity of MAME, I think it's real easy to consider something a bug when it might not even be. Like, I know there's been a few postings saying, well, I couldn't get this one thing to work with DriveWire or this weird non-standard ROM in my disk controller and things like that. I don't consider that a bug when you're trying to do something that's a little bit hacky. It's not a bug when it emulates the operating system. And again, I think for every question or challenge you're trying to do, there's probably an answer, and there are people out there that could direct us to those answers, because I believe there is a way to specify a custom ROM cartridge to a disk controller. It's just knowing all the dashes and slashes and spaces to put in that launcher command to make it happen, but it's doable. Is it elegant? No. There were definitely some cool things in VCC that I learned from David Ladd, how you can change the BIOS of your disk controller, and we can, there are some very elegant things that VCC does. That there are things we could tear apart that VCC doesn't do too. I would prefer not to bash any product, because there are people who are working on them. These are people's products and people's projects, and I don't want to bash the person who works on them. We can sit here and say, yeah, there's things I would like it to have or not have, but when it comes to something like VCC, it's a kind of a small homegrown thing, and if you're going to start to tear that apart, well, you're starting to step on the toes and feelings of a few people of the community that I would prefer not to do. When it comes to MAME, well, it's a big animal, right? So there's 1,000 people on there, so yeah, we could technically piss all over MAME and not be offending any one person. But again, I would prefer to treat these projects with a little bit of respect and just appreciate what they do, as opposed to always complain about what they don't, and then hopefully through conversations and dialogues we can move forward and get some of these other features smoothed out over time,
Yeah. And we want to encourage development. I mean, and development from beginners too. Like, you don't have to be able to write a game like Nick. You can write a basic game. Like, just start at your own level and ask for some help to make it better or faster or whatever you need to do. And I don't think we should bash people doing beginners projects or anything else either. For the same reason.
No, not at all. Not at all. But yeah, there are a handful of emulators for the color computer. Some are very specific, like VCC and XROR are very specific. And then you have something like MAME, which is such a broad spectrum application that we're trying to use for a very focused solution, and the nature of it makes it hard for it to be a focused product. But I think there's pros and cons to everything, and you're probably going to get a more quicker response and release on XROR and MAME than you will on VCC. There definitely appears to be a huge latency in VCC project enhancements. I think the last person who said he was working on it was Jason Ross, and he says he's got some plans, but his plans are 2 years out before they're going to be public. So there's a very short list of people working on VCC. I remember a long time ago I had asked the question, and again, I like to ask these theoretical pie in the sky questions. Why couldn't we take all these people and make them all work together on the one super emulator? Why not get the XROR people and the VCC people and the MAME people and figure out all the pieces that are perfect, and let's cherry pick the best cores and drivers and emulations, and let's build the super CoCo emulator. That would be it's a cool wish to ask for, but does it make sense? Are there benefits to doing that? And who knows?
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to say is, especially when you were showing the MES UI, is if you was to, since MAME, when you build it, you can still build MAME for just the MES components. And then you can build that just for the CoCo related stuff only. Mm-hmm. If you could do that with the MES UI, and, if MES UI had its own little more enhancements that were specific for people that, want the ease like VCC, that should be doable, because right now MES UI, from what you showed me, gives almost the same feel that VCC had.
Right, minus the direct manipulation of the multi-pack.
Right, and if that was something that was added, then, there's a lot of stuff that would save time. Plus, MAME has that built-in debugger, which for developers would be extremely handy.
Yes, I've been using it quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
Doesn't VCC actually have the multi-pack?
It does, yeah. VCC has got a very cool multi-pack GUI where you can change the slider and you can selectively insert different DLL files into the different cartridge slots, or insert a cartridge ROM into one of those slots. So yeah, VCC does the best job of making the MPI user-friendly.
But there's no developers out there to actually create more new devices as such. So
at the moment,
like SSC cartridge, there's no one developing that device for it.
Not at the moment, but I think Tim Lindner also said that because it's now been developed in MAME, if somebody wanted to take that and just give credit to the MAME source where it came from, they're free to redo it. But whoever they are and when they are going to do it is also another question. So
it also depends on the development environment between the two too, like how easy it is going to be to translate MAME code, which is written to be multi-platform, onto something like VCC, which I think is Visual Studio or something.
It was original Visual Studio version 6, which, trust me, is a pain in the rump to get working on newer Windows. But yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. So when I started my journey and when I started doing YouTube videos and trying to find color computer emulators, I started on VCC because it was the easiest to understand. It was the easiest to literally hit the ground running with. And a good, 60 to 80 of some of my original videos were all done in VCC. And it was, I think it was Curtis or somebody who left a comment one time and said, hey, what emulator are you using? Because some of these colors here look a little off, especially on the game of
that was me.
Clowns and Balloons, or was Shooting Gallery. Shooting Gallery is one of those games that did a really good job of taking all these artifact colors and creating greens and blues and purples and other kind of pseudo faux colors that VCC just could not handle. VCC takes, what we call red on the CoCo P Mode 4 screen is kind of an orange, and the blue is kind of a sky blue, and with VCC it's kind of a very dark red, like a blood red, and like a navy blue. So those colors aren't quite the same, and it doesn't do anything to create the kind of faux colors, the dithered colors of like checkerboarding red and white to create orange and red and black to create brown and all those other fancy tricks and hacks and stuff. So that's where XRoar does a really good job. And ironically, XRoar's artifact emulation they took from MAME, right? So XRoar's emulation came from MAME. So XRoar and MAME do the best job of emulating those artifact colors, you know. Where VCC does not do well in that area, but it does very well doing any of the red, green, blue, P-Mode 3 stuff. It does really good doing CoCo 3 stuff. I believe it was recently discovered that there are some issues with the 6309 emulation on it, where I think there were some discussions about how basic 09, and again, the things that we report as bugs or glitches, sometimes it's hard to know what the truth is. When you're not running something on real hardware, what's the problem? Is it the software? Is it the emulator? And it takes somebody with a little bit more knowledge to really pinpoint what that was. But I believe that was discovered to be an actual 6309 issue.
Yeah, the divide commands, the hardware divide commands in the 639 emulation VCC were not working.
Yeah. So again, we're not trying to piss on that project, but I guess the moral of the story is none of them are perfect. You know, and we're all going to have our favorites.
Yeah, as far as VCC goes with the 6309, I went through the source code for the 6309, and there's actually quite a few instructions that are not implemented in the source code. So there's if you're developing to do 6309 stuff and it doesn't work, I would probably suggest trying it on a real CoCo to verify first before you start blaming your own code or another application if it's not working, because it's a possibility you found one of those instructions that aren't implemented yet. Yeah.
There's a little bit of chat going on here too in the in the actual text chat. So some discussions on VCC and XRoar and MAME. One of the questions was about the licensing for MAME, which I don't know how to answer. But I think MAME has loosened up its licensing a lot recently too, because the ability to distribute MAME with Linux distributions and things like that, I think, is definitely been loosened up. And then 6809E is saying XRoar artifact colors originally ripped off from MAME. Now it does a low pass filtering and pretty dynamic NTSC emulation. It kind of does. When there are some very fine-tuned options to the artifacting now you can get out of XRoar, as far as and it's using math and science to calculate those artifacts. So it's not just software facsimile. It's more, kind of what's the word? Let's go more of like an algorithm now to generate the artifacts that's a little bit truer to analog stuff.
And I think both of those were originally based on work Sockmaster had done to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and I think Sockmaster had mentioned that he's the one who introduced the artifact code to MAME, and he tried to keep it simple.
So actually he had a more complicated one that would take more CPU overhead to
So he just tried to keep it simple. So there might be better ways to artifact out there, but the ones that are out there now really don't suck.
No, they're pretty close if you put it next to a real CoCo on a TV or a composite monitor.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we all have our favorites, and there's nothing wrong with being a fanboy of a particular emulator. I would like people to have an open mind and say, well, if you haven't tried it, give it a shot. And yeah, you can nitpick at some of the things that aren't elegant about it, but I think it offers a solid platform for somebody who's interested in trying to emulate something on a cartridge to be able to do that. And I'm assuming VCC can probably do that too, but I think it's definitely probably a very good development platform to use MAME besides testing out new hardware, but the debugging and things like that. So. And it's there. So what people do with it, it's kind of up to them at this point, I think.
Yeah, if you had to be generalized about it, I would say that VCC is good for the people that just want to fire up old CoCo games or old CoCo programs and just run them. Yeah. For ease of use. And then MAME, if you're a developer and you want to start targeting some of this new hardware that's coming out, or even some of the hardware that's already out, that's probably better because of the debugger and everything else. So.
Gotcha. Well, we were just joined by Tandy themselves. Hey, Tandy, love your products. Tandy says MAME is now GPL2, and so it can be modified and redistributed very easily now. Okay, that's the general public license. Is that what GPL stands for? Or the GNU or GNOME or general public, one of those G-sounding words. GNU, GNOME, Goodnight, G'day. So that was Darren Grant from his Tandy account. Okay. Hey, Darren. Well, Darren and Tandy, we kind of associate you as being the same thing. So, Mr. Tandy. Yeah. All right. So I think we're done beating the emulator to death at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What else do we want to talk about before we wrap up this talk?
How about disk formatting?
How about disk formatting? Anybody have any experience in that arena? Such a random topic to pull out of the air.
Only something I've been screwing with for the last month.
Sorry about that.
Is there anything you can show us through a screen share, or does it just have to be a discussion?
It'd probably have to be a discussion because I think it's going to be kind of hard for me to show on the real stuff because I've got my images not prepared for it.
Okay.
But something that I was doing back in the time, which I'd forgotten about, which thanks to Curtis brought it to the foreground of my memory, which was a utility for OS 9, which was a modified format command called Format 20, which allows you to get 2 extra sectors on a track when you're formatting it. So instead of 1 through 18, you get 1 through 20. And now there's been some discussions that Curtis had said that some people had issues with this not being very reliable. Well, it's only not reliable if you're using marginal floppy disks, which back then there were some companies that didn't use very good magnetic media. So, but from the testing I've had with the floppies I own, I've not had any issues with formatting the extra 2 sectors on the floppy. So on like an 80-track floppy, you can get right about 800K on a 720K floppy disk, formatting the extra 2 sectors.
Yeah, and if you have a 40-track double-sided, you go from 360 to 400K. Even if you have like a 40-track single-sided, you go from 180 to 200K, so you're gaining extra room.
So there's benefits, and it's really useful if you're doing backups, if you're space limited, because especially when you're dealing with OS 9 and you're wanting all the tools the power tools that you want to fit it all on one disk. You want to squeeze every inch, every bit of bits that you can get in that space onto that track. And I went so far as I wanted to know how this worked. And Curtis says, well, you could use disassembler and just take a look. And I'm like, well, okay. So I DASM'd it. And I'm like, well, then I compared to Nitrous 9's format command. And I started looking at the headers. And then I went to Western Digital's documents to look at the Western Digital 1770X specifications. And then once I started looking at what they did with the Format 20, I'm like, what the heck? The specs don't match up. So they're definitely doing some bit hackery during the formatting to get the 20 sectors. Now, using Western Digital specifications, I was able to squeeze out 19 sectors, but when I started fudging the numbers based on specifications, everything went to hell and it broke. So some of their numbers they played with, I'm like, it doesn't match what technically you're supposed to be doing, and I'm like confused at how they managed to get it working, but it works. So it's certainly impressive what you can do. And you can emulate that on the CoCo SDC, VCC, and XROR, because the CoCo SDC, you can use an SDF disk image, which will store the track data for the disk image, which means then you can simulate this special formatting on the CoCo SDC. With VCC and XROR, you can use a disk image format called DMK, which is what the SDF disk image is based on. And sadly, right now, MAME doesn't support writing to a DMK disk image yet. I'm hoping a certain individual will fix that.
It does read them, though, correctly, right?
It reads
Yes.
them, yeah. I ran into this issue when I had first started doing stuff on VCC. I didn't even know I could create a generic floppy from scratch in an emulator. So I had downloaded a blank floppy from the Color Computer archive, and I guess the one I downloaded was a DMK formatted one. I could not even get that to open in XROR. I found I could not get it to open in the SDC. I could get it to open in MAME as read-only, and I could get it to open in VCC, but not XROR. Now, maybe my XROR is out of date. I'm not sure. But I had an issue even with that. But, yeah, there's definitely it's just another another format. I know there's a handful of formats now. It'd be nice if we can get these formats on the same page with our emulators and with our hardware devices.
Yes, that's one of the things, because with all this testing I've been doing, which you can ask Curtis, I've been messaging him a lot during this whole playing around. But XROR, you have to make sure if it's a DMK disk image that the extension is DMK. And I think the same is with MAME. It has to be DMK.
Yeah.
VCC, even if you try when you create a disk image and you try to call it whatever your name .dmk, it changes your extension to DSK. So no matter what you set the extension to, it keeps automatically changing the extension to .dsk. So I need to post that as one of the things that might need to be changed in a future once ever that gets around. But yeah, for MAME and XROR,
keep the extension as DMK so we know what it is.
Yes. Now there are another disk image format that you can specify a header on it that will give you the extra sectors, which is the JVC, which what MAME creates a JVC disk image, but it doesn't stick the header on it by default. But you can add the header later if you need it for, special floppies. And VCC supports that. XROR is supposed to, but when I tried to do these specially formatted floppies with XROR crashes. It literally blows up. And the CoCo SDC on the web page says it only supports the JVC only in relations to how many heads. It does not honor how many sectors are in the JVC file. So, like for instance, if I told it I wanted a 20 sector 2-head per track JVC, it ignores how many sectors. So it's something that's warned up front, because he says JVC only thing that's used is the heads. So you just kind of have to go with the flow on some of this stuff.
What is the main benefit to doing this on? I get it if you're doing real hardware and you want to squeeze as many bytes onto the physical floppy as possible to conserve mediums. What's the benefit of doing this when with emulation and CoCo SDC, our capacity is virtually limitless?
The main reason is if you're transferring between real floppies to CoCo SDC or emulators. Like if you don't want to have to try manually copy every file off from a bigger format real floppy onto, say, a hard drive image or something like that, This way, you can actually just back up the disks.
Okay, so if you've got a real-world physical floppy that is formatted with these extra tracks, it would be nice to be able to copy those to a virtual disk and maintain that format. Okay, that I understand. Yeah,
the main reason for it is to give real hardware more room. Like if you have any real floppy, whether it's a 3.5 or a 5 1/4, whether it's single-sided or double-sided, as long as it works in the CoCo, you can get some extra room out of it.
Right. Is this also related to how certain copy protection would work because they're using other tracks that a normal situation would not account for?
Yes, in two ways. The DMK and the SDF will support information that is hidden in your track data, which is how some copy protection is. There's others where when they format a track, they'll actually change a sector number. So, like for instance, let's say you have sector 1 through 18, but let's change sector 9 on one track to be sector 19. So that way, disk basic, when you try to back up the disk, errors out. Sector missing. So you can't back up the disk.
Gotcha.
Or they change the size of the sector. So your sector 19 could be 512 bytes instead of 256. There's different tricks that you could do for copy protection. Or even better yet, with this 19 or 20 extra, the total sectors on a track, you could hide your extra data for copy protection in those extra 2 sectors that people wouldn't know that are there. So if they're backing up, well, the backup command just said it successfully backed up the entire disk, but it missed 2 sectors on every track, and now when they run it as a backup, it don't work.
Right. You got a broken copy.
Yeah, Decom was rather famous for this because they did half the disk with 10 24-byte sectors, and then they used odd sector numbers on other parts of the disk, and basically the only track that was left completely alone was, I think, the directory track.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, yeah, it's a cool little, this is like floppy hackery, is what it sounds like. And, and floppy floppy hackery definitely existed during the time of the real physical floppies, and now we're working on
other platforms too. I mean, the Amiga and some other ones also use the same type of tricks.
So now we're just trying to create the modern digital electronic equivalent of that, or at least implement it somehow through emulation and stuff.
Yeah, the DMK disk image format is actually, from what I was doing, what little research I saw on that disk image format, it's actually used elsewhere as well. It's not just for the CoCo stuff.
Yes.
So
it was one of the defaults on the Cat Weasel board, which was a hardware board you could put into a PC that basically would copy any floppy format known to man.
Interesting.
And basically I used that actually to create some of the DMK games that you see on the CoCo archive that were copy protected and hadn't been broken or cracked yet. That was how some of those were made, actually. I had one on loan.
So that DMK format, because DMK is currently not supported by the CoCo SDC, you are limited to one of the 1 or 2 emulators that supports it right now to run those particular
well, the SDF format is kind of DMK with a header change or header add-on. I can't remember if it's added to or just changed. It basically will handle the same thing, and I think that works on the CoCo SDC. So there's a little converter utility. You can convert a DMK to an SDF, and then it should work. You just can't run the raw DMK on it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that then if you convert like for instance, if you're doing these backups, like what I've been doing all this testing, right now, SDF is only supported on the CoCo SDC. I'm hoping that maybe that will get ported over to MAME and maybe to VCC and XROR. VCC will probably be an eon, but it'll probably eventually get in there. But it's more than likely it will eventually be seen in XROR and MAME.
Okay, interesting. It's an interesting little. It's a cool little. I mean, if we're going to emulate stuff, and we're emulating hardware, it'd be interesting that we can emulate even the ways we hacked hardware, so that is kind of cool. I think, the fact that we can emulate all these different things is pretty cool, or, we can at least start to push in that direction to get them included in these emulation projects.
And in this case, you're emulating what the real 1773 or 1793 disk controller chip could do. Because it can do 128, 256, 512, 10, 24-byte sectors. And just to give a very brief technical explanation how the 20-sector trick works, when you have a track formatted, it's basically every track's the same size in bytes. But there's padding between each sector, and there's a little sector header that says that, okay, we're going to call this sector number 1. We're going to call this one number 2. That's where the copy protection would suddenly start using wonky numbers that weren't contiguous. But basically all this thing does is it takes the number of extra padding bytes between each sector and just shrinks it. So if it was, I can't remember what the exact numbers are, say it was 40 bytes of padding, now it's 30. And there's a certain threshold if you go too far down that it starts becoming unreliable. But through a lot of testing back in the 80s, we discovered that the 20 sectors was quite reliable. I mean, our system at work, we used that same format for 10 years backing up and never had problems unless we had bad floppies.
And I also use that same utility, which, I'd forgotten about because it's been, 20 plus years since I had originally been using the real hardware until the last couple of years. But yeah, I was using it back then without any issues, except for when I buy those off-brand cheap floppies, and then that's, you buy what you pay for. So, it'd
be like buying a VIC-20. It's the same type of thing. So, get what you pay for.
Right.
But it's something that if you want to experiment with how, if you're writing software and you want to see how could I have copy protected it back in the day, you could simulate it still with the CoCo SDC. If you're don't have a working real floppy drive, you can simulate it on the CoCo SDC or VCC or XROR, and hopefully soon with MAME.
Okay, well, sound like it'll come to XROR too, because 6809E is saying yes, SDF is definitely coming, probably as soon as I recover SDC from the loft. He needs to get his SDC down. So
so 6809E is Kieran.
60.
Yes, 60. Okay. So yeah, we're getting it from the source at this point.
Okay.
It's
coming. That's good to know.
It's coming, yes. And so he says that that the HXC floppy emulator uses a nice format that's just MFM transition data. So that will be coming. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And Darren,
I should mention too, like I was talking about the Basic 09D compiler earlier, and Wayne Campbell, who's now in the chat, is the author of that.
Ah, Wayne, there we go. Hey, Wayne, we were talking about you earlier too.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely cool.
So many names, it's hard to keep up with everybody.
Yeah.
But so 60, since you heard me, I did find a bug. So, but
way to call him out on the air, man.
Yeah, at the beginning of the show, Wayne, we Curtis started off by mentioning the Decom project, and that it's being worked on again.
Oh, Decom's the original name.
Decom's the original name, but yeah, okay. 60 says I heard.
It's a nice problem having all these names to remember, because to be honest, we're getting more and more people back into the community, and some of the ones that like Wayne have been around for decades ago are now back into it too. So it's nice to have this problem rather than we're dwindling down to 2 or 3 people left.
Yeah. Well, I forgot how John Linville put it one time. Like, we're just showing up to see who's not dead this year.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow,
it's like the Mort call. It's Celebrity Death Watch or whatever.
Yeah, right. The death pool, right?
Well, plus also having these talks and getting people back and having everybody, conversing on these different emulators too, can maybe hope to get a common feature base between them all as well. You know, since we've got for the real CoCos, the CoCo SDC getting support from some of the features it has into the emulators that we all currently use, is also a good thing. So
yeah, definitely. We're gonna see if we can get Wayne to join us here, and we're gonna wrap this one up here in just a minute too, because my stomach is now telling me that it's time to eat. I think we have reached the average 2-hour time, although we have gone longer in the past. Yeah, it would be nice to see if we can get Wayne on the call here real quick. The one challenge with doing this is that if we're doing this through the Skype group, we keep reaching that ceiling of capacity of how many members are in the group. So that's at some point in time, you guys, as long as I can have everybody as a friend of mine, as long as you're a contact to me in Skype, I can just add you to any random call. We're probably gonna have to get to that point where we'll just have people continue to call me, and I'll add you to the call. But I can only add somebody to an existing call if they are already contacts with me. And in the case of the CoCo Talk, I don't think we can add anybody else to this now because we've reached that 24 user limit for this group that we have to keep juggling people in and out of. But yeah, it'd be good to get you on, Wayne. If you want to try to send a friend, if you want to try to send me a friend request on Skype, I'll see if I can get you in right now. OG Stevie Stroh is the name. If I click on recent, I don't know how I can see who's adding me right now. I'm not super Skype literate, but we'll see what I can figure out here. Am I missing anything in Skype right now, guys? Anything on the text chat? Because I typically don't. I watch it full screen. I don't usually look at the chat.
There hasn't been too much in there. Was just a few things from way
Wayne
back.
says I'm having trouble getting my Skype started. Well, we'll definitely try to take it offline. So I'm just going to put out here my email. And that my actual Skype ID is just OG Stevie Stroh. So if you can add that in the future, Wayne, we'd love to get you in here and get you on a future CoCo Talk. Cool stuff. Yeah, so floppy, just squeezing more bits and bytes out of our floppy. That's kind of cool. It's kind of like, you know, when you do anything retro, it's just everybody's got their own shade of crazy. Like, I could sit here and say, well, that's kind of a crazy project. Why do you want to do a freaking floppy? Somebody else can look at me working on BASIC and say, well, what kind of crazy idiot's working on BASIC? It sucked 35 years ago. Why are you using it now? You know, so it hasn't sucked any less. It's still slow. Why are you doing that? So we all find what interests us, and that's kind of the cool thing about this hobby is that everybody's got a different interest on what they want to do, and everything we do, I think, kind of fuels the fires.
Yeah. The nice thing about the floppy thing is that we have some people in the group that don't do the emulation stuff. They want to run on the real hardware, and this is a trick that actually works in the real hardware, and it gives you like a bonus extra space per disk under OS9 or Nitrous 9. So. Oh,
really? It won't do it under RS-DOS at all?
It will, but you'd have to patch BASIC because BASIC has no idea there could be a sector past 18.
Okay.
You could patch it to do so, yes.
So the bonus.
But then you wouldn't be within what would be compatible with your regular stuff either.
Yeah, the advantage of OS9 is that you have that header sector at the beginning of every disk you format that tells the operating system, okay, here's how many sectors per track I have, here's how many tracks I have, here's how many sides I have. So basically, it just reads that and goes, "Oh, I need to do this," and it just runs.
Okay.
Whereas RS-DOS is hard coded for 35 tracks, single sided.
Wayne, I think you need to add me as a friend first, because I can't add you to this call that's already going on. So I see Wayne's trying to call me right now, but I think you need to add me as a friend. And so this might be a little bit more technical than I'm able to do right now. While stuff's going on here, but I see you trying to call me. I can't answer that call. I don't even know how to like click on your name and make you a friend right now, Wayne. I'm not that Skype savvy.
We can try setting it up for the next week or something.
Yeah.
After you eat.
Oh yes. Food is calling. But yeah, no. I think this was a good talk. This was, I had a lot of challenges this weekend. I had to reformat my PC. And I lost a day yesterday because we spent 5 or 6 hours at a family party type thing down the street. So I lost pretty much a whole day yesterday to make any progress, and I was literally working on my computer up until 20 minutes before go live time to get all my software reinstalled and everything else. So it was like a last minute thing to get everything up to the point where I could even do this talk today. And for not having a lot of time to prepare, I think it was a pretty good talk.
Yep. I think the only real issue you had was the pause key triggering your software.
Yeah. So I am, but yeah, not bad. So yeah, and Nick Marentes has just joined us back. So yeah, let's wrap up this week. We got plenty of things to talk about next week. You need to like go to contacts and search for contacts and then put in my name, OG Stevie Stroh, and then I'll see it and I'll accept it and then I can add you in. It's a little bit of a process there, Wayne, but we'll get you here. Get some new blood into the talks here. I definitely, on my list to expel is Curtis Boyle and David Ladd. I will throw these guys out in a heartbeat to let anybody else in this call. So,
hey, listen here, bub.
He's just jealous of us, Dave.
Yeah, I am so jealous of your extra 2 tracks on your floppy.
Well, Dave will just create a new personality anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He would be... Yes, Paco shamed Tay because he was shamed out of the group. So, good times. All right. Now there's got to be a way to add. Tell me what your Skype ID is, Wayne, and I'll try to add you too. We can maybe do it in reverse where I can pull you in that way. All right. Any closing remarks? Anything you guys want to talk about? Something else you're working on, or something that we might be able to show off next week? Some teasers for next week's show.
Has there been any updates for the Tandy assembly?
That's a good question. Has there been any updates for well, in a way there has been. Good question there, Grant. Let me switch over to the Tandy assembly site. We'll pull up the site real quick. One of the things that that you can do now from the exhibitors tab, they did release the floor plan, and you can now fill out the form. You can download a form and apply to be a visitor and an exhibitor in advance. It's looking like the early bird price to do that is $30 for a table, and I believe that exhibitors also includes your entry to the fest. And I believe there's a limit of tables too. There's like 26 tables available, so they do have a floor plan, and that is part of it. Who is the speakers right now? I think the speakers haven't changed too much, but
I should mention on the speakers there. We didn't mention it last week when Lance Nicholas was there. He's actually done CoCo stuff too. He did some work for Advantage International doing some stuff for the CoCo. The one I like the best is the Star Trek 3, which is one of the best Star Trek simulators. He did that port for the CoCo.
Okay. So yeah, I guess it's still going on. We're gonna have Tandy assembly. We have some actual speakers lined up right now, and you are able to get an exhibit. To get an exhibit table now, you can pre-register and save $10 off of that. Who is an exhibitor? It's anyone who wants to display a computer, an accessory, software, hardware, or any artifact from Tandy Radio Shack computer history. Exhibitors may be vendors looking to sell their Tandy computing-related products, or may just be hobbyists wanting to display their work for others to enjoy. So that's kind of the working thing right now. So that's probably the latest thing. What I haven't heard on is I've saw some mentionings on Facebook, like, can you reserve a room and get the block rate or get a standard rate as a Tandy assembly rate just yet? That I haven't heard of, but I don't think there's anything preventing you from either just calling the facility directly and reserving this or using a travel agent. I'm probably going to use my travel agent and book the room and book a rental car, because we're going to do a road trip to this one here.
The last I heard is that the original blocks was not released right off the bat. Some people were trying to reserve and they weren't what they were going, like, what CoCo block. But apparently that was fixed this last week, and now it's official. You can just ask for the CoCo rate or the Tandy assembly rate.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And do we know what that rate is?
Jim's in the chat, and he just said you can. It got fixed on Monday, so he probably knows the rate better than me.
There it is. It's on the page. Okay, so here's the dates. We have a block of rooms available for a discounted rate of $89.95 for Thursday through Sunday nights. The rate is good until September 5th. Mention Tandy Assembly when making reservations. So there we have it. So the block is official. Yeah. And so I think if we've learned anything about this, for somebody who was new to CoCo Fest, do you want to stay over Sunday night? I would say yes. Now, what I'm planning on doing is we're going to probably drive up all day Friday. And so from where I'm at in Florida, it's about a 14-hour drive, but where Michael Brandt is at, it's about a 12-hour drive. So I'm probably going to drive up Thursday night, crash at Michael's house, and then Friday morning we're going to take the 12-hour drive and be there, Friday night. And then we'll have all day Saturday and Sunday. Definitely stay over Sunday, and then drive home Monday. That's kind of my working plan right now. So I'm going to have a rental car basically from Thursday through Monday. But I'm thinking with this one, if we can split the cost of the rental car, split the cost of the room and everything else, this might be pretty affordable for Michael and I to cut all this down, because, for airfare and hotel was about $600 for me to go to CoCo Fest. I'm hoping this is going to be considerably less than that. And then, or even by splitting it in half, at least be considerably less than that to make it a slightly more affordable trip. So yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to going. It is, it's the first ever Tandy Assembly, and history will be made. Good question, Grant.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It was definitely a rough week, but I'm almost 100%.
At least you got to read the book.
Yeah, and the book was really good. And that was another thing too. We ought to get Boise on here sometime.
Yeah, no doubt. We've had him on once to talk about stuff, but yeah, we should. It would be great to get to Boise and Bill LaJudas as well, because both of them worked on it. That would be great to talk to them about it. Now they have been interviewed for like the Floppy Days podcast and things like that, so I'm sure there's stuff out there where we could listen to and hear some of that information. But it'd be great to hear it from them firsthand and do like a live Q&A too.
Well, Boise worked in microware and stuff too, so you can kind of get into that part of the background, not just the book.
Yeah. Now, I learned a lot reading that book. Just there's so many things that you just you would have no idea to know. Basically, what a bunch of freaking penny pinching scumbags they were to make these machines. Is every chance you can is how hard can we squeeze this nickel into the buffalo excrements? You know what I mean? It's just like it's all about it's. And on the one hand, you got to figure what drives innovation. And in this case here, it was the almighty dollar, where they basically said, sure, you want to engineer a new machine? That's fine, as long as it costs us less money. If you can save me money, then go at it and make a new, better chip. And something has to drive innovation. In this case here, it was budget, and it's really
Steve?
Impressive. Yeah.
Have you ever heard Marty Goodman's term for those guys?
No.
He called them cretinous chimpanzees.
So
it's too bad we can't get Marty on. I'd like to have him live again. He's a fun guy to talk to.
Wow. So yeah, it was a great book to learn some of the history, even just learning some of the history of how Tandy started before they merged with Radio Shack and everything else.
And one thing I should mention, there was another history done years ago. I think the guy's name was Alfredo Santos. And he kind of covered a little bit of the Tandy stuff, but he also covered the history of third-party hardware and software developers for the CoCo. And he kind of had a timeline from 1979 till 1993 or something. I know Frank Swaggart published it, I think, in his World of 6-8 Micros book, too. That might be something to actually go through, because a lot of people don't know that either. Yeah, the CoCo Chronicles.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, Wayne Campbell just pointed something out too that I think was kind of a kiss of death for the CoCo 3 in a bit. CoCo 3 came out right around the same time that the Tandy 1000 was out, and that was the future. MS-DOS and everything else, as we know, that's the direction that the world took. And so because Tandy had these two products, they were almost going to be competing with themselves. And if the CoCo 3 was too good, then that's less Tandy 1000s that they could possibly sell. But again,
which is a higher profit margin.
A higher profit margin, probably, right? So there was really it was really a lot of corners were cut. It's really impressive when you look at it now what the CoCo 3 can actually do, and the fact that the Gimme was a custom engineered chip that gave it all its extra features that didn't exist, and that was an in-house design thing. That's really impressive, and these are the things that I did not know at all until I read that book. I just was not aware of the hardware behind it, the politics behind it, the process behind it. So it's a great book. You would love to get those guys on sometimes to get more into that history and hear it in their words and stuff. Might be kind of cool to get together not only Boise and Bill, but maybe some of the other people they interviewed too, and have the whole team together. That'd be really cool. But yeah, so those would be things that we can talk about at Tandy Assembly. We can talk about not just the CoCo stuff, but Tandy that was my second computer. My second one. I went through a few different CoCos before I jumped onto the Tandy 1000. But yeah, it's part of my history too. So I'm really looking forward to Tandy Assembly. I think it's going to be cool. Yeah, good times. But we'll save some of this. We're gonna put this in a bottle right now so it doesn't go stale. We want to keep the carbonation and all this CoCo enthusiasm here, and we'll keep it fresh for next week so we can crack open another nice bubbling talk of CoCo excitement. And hopefully we'll have some more projects to talk about. Hopefully by next week I will have released a MAME video that's not confusing and not interrupted by pauses in the stream. I'll try to keep a concise, simple, step-by-step. Here's how to get MAME installed and configured as a CoCo. I haven't officially done that video yet. It's on my list to do. What else? There was something else you said we should talk about, Curtis, too, which we'll try to do really quick here. But it was the discussion about the 256 color mode in the Gimme. And Steve Bjork had mentioned something in the Facebook group that there was no way it was going to happen unless it could cost less money than the CoCo 2, and the only reason why the CoCo 3 was released was a cost savings over the CoCo 2, and we know corners were always cut. But yeah, so there's been the talk of this 256 color mode coming out of the Gimme for a long time, and is it a myth? Is it a unicorn? Is it a
was it only in the prototype stages?
So does it exist?
I want to believe.
Yes, I want to believe. So, I think the true now one of the things that Alan Huffman alluded to, which I don't know if this is top secret knowledge, but we do have in possession the original prototype machines, and I think right now Alan got them at CoCo Fest, and I'm not sure who Alan's giving them to, but he's giving them to someone where what the prototype was able to be done will be determined at some point in time.
Yeah. There's also an Ethernet card from that and a few other things too that existed.
And I believe, because I think Microware had access to some of the prototype machines.
Well, they had the big massive breadboard where the Gimme's actually a whole bunch of different chips. It's not even a single chip yet.
Yeah.
And the original spec sheets from Tandy to Microware, which are published, you can see them, actually does mention this mode being in the original design spec. But according to Steve, because of cost issues, it was cut out. I mean, Mark Siegel thinks, at least when he was interviewed by Nick back in 97, 98 or whatever it was, he said it was still in there. It was just kind of hard to get to. And then when Bill and Boise interviewed him 10 years later, it sounds like he'd kind of changed his mind and he didn't remember it still being in there. And Steve is kind of definitively saying, no, it didn't make the final production machine, so I still don't know.
Yeah. Okay, Eric. So Darren says, I think Eric has the prototype right now. Eric Gavriluk, is he the one who would have it right now? So it is possible to reverse engineer that and determine if the feature, and there's no reason to believe why it wouldn't have existed on a prototype, because the prototype is where we think we're going. And this is, like you say, this is the design spec. This is what we want to do. However, when it goes time to roll out to production, the almighty dollar is going to dictate what the final build of materials is going to be, and that feature might have gotten squashed to save money. So the truth is out there. The truth will be determined at some point in time. And Rick Adams wants to believe. So we all want to believe. So and it's definitely something that I think with projects like the CoCo FPGA and the Darren, what's the other one called? I get all these names confused right now. So there's CoCo FPGA and there's CoCo on a stick, or CoCo on a chip. So some of these things here might be able to implement some of these features. in a more hardware accurate way, where it's not just some new bonus super feature. So Ed Snyder's new Gimme might be able to unlock a feature like this in the future. So the ability for us to take advantage of this is not out of reach.
If this disassembly of the prototype actually reveals if the mode was there and how to physically access it, and if Mark's original assertion is correct that there is a hidden way to still get to it, then the new Gimme, if we can emulate that, then it would actually work with the old machines too. So, but I suspect it's probably not in there in the original.
Yeah. All right, well, that might be something we can report on as the weeks go by, as we discover more information too. Is the 256, the elusive, the unicorn mode, as we'll call it. So,
yeah, Nick has a really good blog post and all the research him and Sock did in trying to find it.
Yeah,
based on that interview with Mark.
Yeah. Good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, I guess we will wrap up this week's CoCo Talk. I want to thank everybody who's here now and those of us who were with us before, who kind of came and went. And always something good to talk about when we have CoCo Talk here. So that's nice. Even when we don't have a big plan, things happen, and that's a beautiful thing. So
we have plans.
I thought we'd just come with this stuff right out of our touche.
Yes. So for those of us who are remaining on the call right now, from Grant and David and Mark and Curtis and Bill and Nick and Rick, thank you all for being here. For those of you who were with us before, thank you for being here. Let me see if I can acknowledge some people in the chat without missing anybody this week, because I missed John Linville last week. So yes, Curtis was here, Michael Brandt was here, Richard Cavill was here, NML32 was here, Michael Brandt, Eric Hancock was here, Grant was here, Ed Snyder was here, Richard Lorbieski was here, both on the voice call and on the chat call. Tim Lindner had stopped by earlier, and 6809E was here. Mr. X-Roar himself was here, and Bosco was here. Who else was here? Wayne Campbell joined us. And who else joined us here? Tandy/Darren Grant joined us. And Bob Fazmike. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. So Bob Fazmike had joined earlier. It says, I just got back into CoCo via your channel using emulators. I had a CoCo 116K back in the early 80s. And then Bob says, doing some basic along with your channel tutorials. Will you be covering machine code, namely routines called from BASIC? I told him that I eventually plan to get to that. He said, thanks. And have I missed anybody else? I think I've gotten everybody. Retro Innovations had stopped by too. Jim Brain talking about how the rates were fixed on Monday, and it's $89.95 plus tax for Tandy Assembly. Very good. I think we got everybody. I think I've acknowledged everyone that I can remember. And for those of you who I forgot, I apologize. So that's it. Another great week of CoCo Talk. Getting ready for Tandy Assembly, getting ready for more projects. Looking forward to more blog updates from Nick and Glen Hewlett and everybody else working on projects. Looking forward to hearing more and seeing more from what Rick Adams is working on. I cannot wait to try out this 20-track floppy myself. I swear to God, I'm super excited about it.
Me, bit of sarcasm.
Just a bit.
Steve, there's no reason to be sarcastic about it. It's useful, man.
We haven't even told them yet you can put extra tracks on some of those, too.
Yeah, some 3.5s up to 85, but commonly, normally 82 to 84.
You're getting me excited. And the best part is that all of this extra space is used by OS 9. So
exactly. Real awesome.
More use to squeeze more crap onto a floppy. So yes, Bob, thank you for stopping by. Very cool. All right, guys, we're going to end this nonsense for one week. And we'll have more nonsense next week. So CoCo forever. Thank you all.
Later.
We'll see you next
Goodbye,
week.
all.
Bye-bye.